Before starting this video, I do want to give a thank you to my patrons that support the channel. And if you would like to support the channel, there are some great benefits for you in the link down below. So with that, let's get into today's video. Hey, what's going on YouTube? This is Devin coming back at you with another video today on Pub Stomp MTG. So I'm going to focus on another commander here in the new Lost Caverns of Ixalan set. There's a ton of commanders to choose from, however, I feel like this is a very interesting one to think about with Xavier, Sal, Infested, Captain. So for black, green, and a blue, it's a legendary creature, human fungus pirate. It has 2 tap abilities. The first tap ability, remove a counter from another permanent you control, you populate, only activate as a sorcery. Or it does have another tap ability, sacrifice another creature and you proliferate, only activate as a sorcery. So again, this is a pretty neat commander. I do feel like this is going to be best served with Plainswalkers and proliferate themes because you're having that ability to populate, also to proliferate. So for me, this could be a very interesting commander around a Super Friends theme. So let's go over some of the cards you may want to put in your deck. So of course, we are in a little bit of a proliferate theme, so we want to take advantage of that to the fullest, especially when we do have a lot of Plainswalkers on the battlefield. So first of all, I did think of Flux Channeler and also Evolution Sage. So essentially, these have an ability whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you proliferate, or with Evolution Sage, whenever a land enters the battlefield, you proliferate. Because we are in a heavy Plainswalker themed deck, Flux Channeler is going to activate so much because it's a non-creature spell we're going to be activating, and of course we're going to be playing lands all the time, so Evolution Sage is must include. Aside from that, Phyrexia All Will Be One gave us a lot of proliferate options like Bloated Contaminator for 2 and a green. It does have Trample and Toxic 1, and when it deals combat damage to a player, you proliferate. So a 2 and a green for a 4/4 trample body is pretty insane on that rate. But on top of that, it does have Toxic, so if we do proliferate a lot, that could be a win condition by itself. Aside from that, another proliferate option that I did want to mention is Park Heights Maverick. This is a pretty good card because it does have Dethrone, and it can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less, and when it deals combat damage to a player or dies, you proliferate. So of course, this is very similar to Bloated Contaminator. When it deals combat damage to a player, you will proliferate, but it also does have a dice trigger when it proliferates, so that's very good. Plus, this does have Dethrone, so the more counters you do put on this, and the more you do proliferate, this is going to be a monster of a card in the deck when you attack with it. It could be possibly like a 10-10 by no time. But let's head back to Phyrexia and also talk about Uzuri, Stalker of Spheres for 2 green and a blue. Whenever it enters the battlefield, you may pay 3. If you do, you proliferate twice. Also, when you do proliferate, you draw a card. So whenever our commander does use that proliferate option, we're just going to be drawing cards with Uzuri and also with all our proliferate options. This is a very good card to abuse in the deck. And the last card I do want to talk about is Tekuthal Inquiry Dominus for 2 and 2 blue. It does have flying, and if you would proliferate, you proliferate twice instead. And it does have that way of giving itself indestructible by removing 3 counters from other artifacts, creatures, or planeswalkers you control. So to be quite honest, I don't have to tell you how good this is in the deck, especially getting those proliferate triggers twice instead of 1 time. So yeah, this is easily a great include in the deck, no question about it. There are also other ways to buff up our planeswalkers. There's a lot of great support for them in this deck. The first one I do want to talk about is very good, specifically with Ixalan Gauntlet. It has that ability to give your planeswalkers proliferate and also get an extra turn. That by itself is very powerful. And whenever you cast a non-creature spell, choose a counter on a target permanent, put an additional counter of that kind on that permanent. I feel like in some situations, if you do have enough planeswalkers in the deck, you could probably get infinite turns if you get to that -12 ability. It's pretty easy to do that. Say for example, you have like 8 or so planeswalkers on the battlefield, and honestly that's pretty easy to do in this deck because of the amount of planeswalkers that are in this deck. So I feel like that's a pretty powerful way of running Ixalan Gauntlet, is just by proliferating all your planeswalkers and get an extra turn and keep on doing that process. Aside from that, we do also have another great card in the deck with a Chain Veil for 4 mana. At the beginning of your end step, if you didn't activate a loyalty ability of a planeswalker this turn, you lose 2 life. That's not really a big downside because of course in Commander we do have 40 life, so its other ability is pretty incredible. The more planeswalkers you do have on the battlefield, you pay for and tap it. For each planeswalker you control, you may activate one of its loyalty abilities once this turn, as though none of its loyalty abilities have been activated this turn. So yeah, so that you could double up and get your planeswalkers to the higher loyalties so that you could possibly get to their ultimates is very important, especially with the Chain Veil. It'll get you there by either +2ing them or +1ing them each time when you're getting those loyalty abilities up. So this is a very good card in the deck. Another very good card I do want to talk about is Karth the Lion. For 2 black and a green, whenever it enters the battlefield or a planeswalker you control dies, look at the top 7 cards of your library. You may reveal a planeswalker card from among them and put them into your hand. Put the rest in the bottom of your library in a random order. So that by itself could provide a lot of ways where we can get planeswalkers filled into our hand. Also, another very important ability of this card is planeswalker loyalty abilities. You activate cost an additional +1 to activate. So in essence, this is not really a downside, because I know a lot of people are thinking, oh, this is a weird tax, but honestly, this is very important because, say for example, you have a planeswalker with a +1, it's going to be a +2 instead of a +1. And if you do have a -1 on a planeswalker, it's just going to be a -0, so it's going to negate itself. So that could be very powerful in the right type of situation. Other cards that could be very powerful in the right type of situation would be Vorinclex Monstrous Raider and also Pure Imaginative Rascal. These basically will double up the counters that we put on our planeswalkers. With Vorinclex, when our planeswalkers enter the battlefield, they will have double the loyalty when they enter the battlefield. That's pretty incredible. And with both of these cards, the more loyalty we put on our planeswalkers, the bigger they will be as far as loyalty goes. So these are definitely insane includes, especially if you want to get your planeswalkers to their ultimates faster. And of course, the best card in the deck, at least in my opinion, is Doubling Season, because we could double up on those counters that our planeswalkers do have. Also, when we populate with our commander, we're going to have a lot of tokens entering the battlefield. We could just double up on those too. So again, this is a very insane card in the deck. The more we could just put loyalty counters on our planeswalkers, and the more we could just put creatures on the battlefield by making extra token copies of them, is very incredible rate just for 5 mana. But of course, I do want to move on to the planeswalkers of this deck. There's a lot of great planeswalkers to include in this deck. I wanted to focus more on ones that could make creature tokens on the battlefield. For example, I did want to put Vivien Monster's Advocate in the deck, because for 3 and 2 green, you can look at the top card of your library at any time, and you can cast creature spells from the top of your library too, so that's some form of card advantage. With its +1 ability, it does have that ability to make a beast token on the battlefield, and for a -2 ability, when you cast your next creature spell this turn, search your library for a creature card with lesser converted mana cost and put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. So for me personally, this is one of my favorite planeswalkers of all time because it has that -2 ability. Say for example, we activated that -2 ability, we casted Vorinclex, and then on top of that we could search our library for something like Karth the Lion, so that we could have an additional way of putting loyalty counters on our planeswalkers. Plus, you can look at the top card of your library at any time and also make beast tokens. This is one of the best planeswalkers, at least in my opinion, that are underutilized. I do also want to talk about another Vivien. With Vivien on the Hunt, for 4 and 2 green, it does have that ability of Birthing Pod for your creatures for that +2 ability. Also, you can mill 5 cards and put any number of creature cards that mill this way into your hand. And also, it will make a 4/4 Rhino creature token on the battlefield for its -1 ability. Personally, I feel like 99% of the time I use that +2 ability so that I could go search for bigger and bigger creatures on the battlefield. But in most cases, I feel like some of those other abilities could be pretty useful too. Other planeswalkers I do want to discuss with you are pretty excellent, like Garruk Cursed Huntsman and Tevesh Doom of Fools. So the main reason why I do like these is the fact that they will create not just 1 token but 2 tokens on the battlefield so that you can defend your planeswalkers with. With Garruk, the more wolves you do have that die, the more loyalty abilities you can put on each Garruk you control, not just this specific Garruk, but any Garruk that you do have on the battlefield, so that's very awesome in my opinion. Also, for his -3, it is removal for creatures, and you get a draw card, and you do have an overrun ability for its -6 ability. Also with Tevesh, you have that ability to make 2 Thrall tokens on the battlefield, and you can sacrifice them to draw a card, but if you do have a commander on the battlefield and you sacrifice it, you could draw 3 cards instead, and you have that -10 ability to gain control of all commanders, whether they're in the command zone or on the battlefield. You just take them away. So again, the main reason why I do like these in the deck is the fact that you can just keep on populating with your commanders so that you can make more tokens on the battlefield, or if you want to proliferate, you could easily do so by sacrificing one of the creatures. Another pretty insane planeswalker I do want to talk about in the deck is Liliana Dreadhorde General for 4 and 2 black. She has a really insane static ability. Whenever a creature you control dies, you draw a card. So first of all, let's just stop there. Our commander will sacrifice creatures so that we can proliferate. So if Liliana is on the battlefield, we could easily just draw more cards when we sacrifice them with our commander. Plus, we get to make a black zombie token on the battlefield that we could sacrifice with our commander too. Plus, it does have that -4 ability, which could be pretty brutal in most instances. We have a lot of planeswalkers in the deck, so we're not really going to be worrying about our creatures too much, but Each player does sacrifice 2 creatures, and also does have a game-ending ultimate of -9. Each opponent chooses a permanent they control for each permanent type and sacrifice the rest. So seriously, Liliana could be a really insane engine in the deck when we could draw some more cards, we make more zombies, and eventually we will get to that ultimate, so this is very powerful in the deck. I do want to talk about one more Plainswalker that will bring much more utility in the deck compared to the other Plainswalkers, and that's Tyvar Jubilant Brawler for 1 black and a green. He may activate abilities of creatures you control as though those creatures had haste. So with our commander, he has 2 tap abilities we want to activate immediately, and this is just one way we could do so. Also, for his +1 ability, you could untap up to 1 target creature, so obviously we're going to be untapping our commander so that we can get that ability twice, or if we want to use the other ability of our commander, either populating or proliferating, Tyvar will give us 2 activations of our commander, so this is very powerful. Plus his -2 is pretty decent. You mill 3 cards and you may return a creature card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. I really don't think you're going to be using that as much in this deck, maybe for mana dorks on some occasion, but I feel like you're going to be using that +1 ability much more. It essentially is a 1,000-year elixir on a Plainswalker, and the more you do activate this, the more you could use your commander's ability throughout the game. However, that's going to do it for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and watching this video on Xavier Sal. I feel like this is going to be a very powerful Plainswalker commander, at least in my opinion. Having that ability to populate so that you can have more blockers on the board, or you could sacrifice those creatures so that you can get proliferate options for all your Plainswalkers in the deck. I feel like this could also be a very powerful Infect commander too, because the more you proliferate, the more you're just going to get your opponents 2/10 poison counters. So obviously with Xavier Sal, he is Infested, or should I say the Infected commander. I mean, that could be one way you could go with this commander, but with this deck, I wanted to go with more of a Plainswalker theme because it just kind of felt right, because Plainswalkers are making creature tokens on the battlefield. You could populate with them, or you could sacrifice them to proliferate. So for me personally, I like this option as a commander for Plainswalker parties. Let me know down below in the comments, do you plan on building this commander? I did make a deck list down below if you do want to look for inspiration for this commander. Again, my deck lists aren't necessarily full-on deck lists. They're more inspiration for you, more of a template if you want to pick and choose cards that you want to put in your own deck if you're planning to build this commander. I do also have a small favor to ask. If you could subscribe to the channel, I do have a goal to getting to 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year. I know that's a tall ask, being around 6,000, almost 7,000 subscribers, but I know this channel could do it, and I know it can't do it without you. So if you can, subscribe. Also make sure to like, share, and with that out of the way, thank you for stomping by.